Good evening, everybody. I hope that you guys can see me. I'm going to wait a minute or two just for a couple of people said that they were running late and just give you guys a minute to kind of hang out with me. You should be able to see, if you're watching this in Google+, you should be able to see that there's a Q&A option. And if you click the Q&A box, you should be able to type questions to me if you've got them, or just say hi if you want to. And that usually appears on the right side of your screen. There's a little box that says group chat. And if you enter a comment on the bottom and hit enter, I should be able to see it from there. So hopefully you guys can hear me. I know I can hear me, so that's got to be really good, right? The Q&A is able, all that other stuff is all going. I'm going to give it another couple of minutes. If you are here, feel free to just kind of click the button and say, hey, Michelle, I'm here, and we will get started. For those of you who haven't used Google Plus before, it actually has a whole lot of super fun functions, but we're not going to get them all going. I'm actually going to try a new one tonight where I'm going to use, there's a function where you can include links and print links for people to see. So I've got a couple of links that hopefully I'll be able to put up there, and then we'll see how we go. So I'm super excited to be here this evening, and it's very exciting, although it's a little weird to talk to yourself, I have to say. So hopefully the rest of you guys will join us shortly, and then we can carry on with this evening's activities. Actually, I should also say that you can probably hear a fair amount of noise in the background. It's actually my family is here having a dinner party, which I catered for 14 people before I sat here tonight, which is just how my life works, really. So that was kind of exciting. Okay, so I'm going to get going. Since I can see it's telling me that quite a few of you are watching now, so I'm going to get going. So firstly, I wanted to say welcome. I am super, super excited to see you guys here. Oh, somebody just put in the comments, did you cut your hair? Yes, I cut my hair significantly. I'm so glad you guys noticed this stuff. So I wanted to welcome you all to what I'm affectionately referring to as one awesome webinar. I'm here because I'm launching the 30 Days of Awesome e-course. A couple of you guys have already signed up, which is amazing. Thank you. You make me feel awesome just by getting involved in that, which is great. But I wanted to take the opportunity to explain a little bit better what that is about, because a lot of people are kind of going, but it's not a business course, but you said you do an online thing, and they're a little bit confused. So I wanted to explain that. Now, for those of you guys who've just joined us, if you're watching me through Google+, you can actually interact and you can write questions in the chat box. Feel free to do that, but I won't be answering them until the very end. Those of you who are watching me via YouTube, you can't actually interact with me other than to send me some love through the screen if you like, but that's how we go. So I thought that the first thing I would do is kind of explain why I wrote this course and why I made it all happen. And then I thought I'd give you 5 different ways that I plan on being awesome in 2015. There are things that I regularly do. So my personal habit is that I never ever give any advice, be that life advice or business advice, unless I'd be willing to take that advice myself, or I've actually done it in the past. And so therefore I've kind of made sure that it really works. So one of the reasons that I wrote the 30 Days of Awesome course as opposed to a business course is because one of my personal life philosophies is all about showing up, meaning you have to actually show up to your life and be like, here I am, I'm going to make this happen. And so often in life, we sit there and we just go, oh, I've got all these bad things happening, nothing's going my way, I don't have enough money, my kids are too little, and we don't show up. We don't actually show up and say, hey, world, here I am, I'm going to make stuff happen, I'm going to make it happen in whatever way I can. So one of the things is, that's my personal philosophy. I think that life is meant to be lived. I think we get one chance to do this, and with one chance, you know, you might as well go for broke because you've pretty much got nothing to lose. And the second reason that I wrote this course is I get an enormous amount of emails from the readers of the blog, which I have to say I love, and I feel so touched that people send me their emails with their personal stories. I actually take it so much to heart when I hear from you guys about how you're doing or how you're not doing if you're struggling. And I read those emails, and although many of them are about pricing and about marketing and about, you know, kind of what do I do about this client that was mean to me, or how do I write my terms and conditions, a vast majority of the emails I get are actually from people asking questions about life. Hey, Michelle, how did you manage it with 3 kids? Hey, Michelle, I've lost my mojo. How do I get it back again? Hey, Michelle, I've been caking for a long time and I'm not making any money and I'm burnt out. How do I get back from feeling so burnt out and so awful? And so a lot of times, it really struck me that as much as you guys ask me about business stuff, you ask me about life stuff. And I like to believe that the blog is not just about running a business, it's about having a life as well. So I wrote the 30 Days of Awesome course because in that are so many tips and tricks and things that I've done throughout the course of my life and my career that have just made it that little bit better. And sometimes, I think it's just about somebody saying to you, hey, why don't you try this? This is a little bit different. Why don't you give that a go? And when you hear it from somebody else, somebody who hopefully you respect and you listen to, sometimes that makes you stop in your tracks and go, oh, I really should try that. I mean, I can tell you when my mom gives me that kind of advice, I'm like, yeah, what if, mom, go away. But if a girlfriend gives me that kind of advice and pushes me out of my comfort zone that little bit more, I'm much, much, much more inclined to actually listen to what she has to say. So that's why I created the business course, because I wanted you guys all to have a reason to move forward. I know that financially for a lot of you, it's not that easy to come and do my my live business course, and that's totally okay. But I still wanted to give you a bit of love, and this is the way that I chose to do it. So in tonight's webinar, I picked 5 ways that we can make next year be that little bit more awesome. And I realize this makes me very 80s to use the word awesome, but I just love it. So you just have to love me and all my 80s nerd. What can I tell you? That's just the way it is. So the interesting thing is that these 5 things don't actually appear in that course anywhere. And I almost felt frustrated by the fact that I was limited to 30 days. And I was limited only because I thought there's a point at which I would overwhelm you guys. And I probably could have written a 365 ways to be awesome course, but I thought let's start with 30 and see how we go from there. But these are things that, although they didn't make it onto my list of 30, are still things that I do every day or every week or whenever they're applicable to me in my life, and I truly believe that they work. If I didn't think so, I wouldn't actually tell you. One of the things I've noticed lately too, which I don't know if I should laugh or cry about this, is that I get a lot of feedback about, oh, you're the business lady, and oh, you're all about money, you're whatever. And the fact is that I am about those things, but I'm actually about many, many, many more things beyond just that. And so I guess in a way, my 30 Days of Awesome course is also a response to that, a response to the, well, you're just about business. Because I am very much about business, because as I often say, you can't exactly pay for the electricity bill by telling somebody you did it for the love. I am very much about all the other stuff. So let's get going, okay? Let's talk about these 5 things that I think are going to make your life, and subsequently my life, that little bit more awesome. So the first one is this concept of a word of the year. I don't know how many of you guys have made resolutions, New Year's resolutions before, but I'm sure you're familiar with the concept, where somewhere at the end of December, we go, oh, totally gonna make some New Year's resolutions. I'm gonna lose 20 pounds. I'm gonna exercise every day. I'm gonna stop smoking. I'm going to never eat chocolate again. No, okay, that's bad resolution. Don't make that resolution. I don't know who would make that resolution. But you start out with this amazing intention, right? I'm gonna do all these amazing things. I'm gonna, I don't know, go on date night every week with my husband, whatever it is that is your big resolution. And we start the year super enthusiastic, and we're like, woo, check me out, I'm doing all this stuff, how awesome is that? And in reality, we get to like the 2nd or 3rd week in Jan, and we're stuffing our face with chips, and we're like, oh my god, I was totally meant to exercise every day. Epic fail. And then we give up because it's all too hard. So a couple of years ago, I read from a person, her name is Christine Kane. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of her. I'm going to see if I can't actually, should in theory allow me to show you guys her website. But anyway, it's www.christinekane.com. Pretty easy to find. I can add an item from a website. So let's try that and see what happens. So basically I don't know if she invented it, but she's got this concept called the word of the year. And the way it works is, instead of making a resolution that you're highly likely to break at some point, because who can maintain the exercise and the no chocolate bit, she actually picks a word, and the word is representative of what she wants that next year to be for herself. She uses it as basically a touchstone. Okay, and the touchstone is just that. Every time you feel yourself kind of veering off, instead of going, oh my god, I didn't eat chocolate, you sort of remind yourself of that word. And I've been known to actually, kind of write that word down or frame it or put it on my wall or whatever, and it really guides the life I want to lead lead for that next year. It's not about having a resolution and then failing at the resolution and going, oh, I'm just a terrible person, whatevs. It's really about going, you know what? This is what I want my life to be like. So I'll give you an example of a couple of ones that relate to other things. So let's say that your goal is weight loss and to eat less chocolate and to do yoga every day or whatever. You really want to lead a healthier life. So maybe your word of the year might be something like health, or it might be something like wellness, which is sort of an overall, feeling of good, of being well. Maybe you want your word to be, maybe you've been making a whole lot of cakes and they're kind of just what clients want, but they're not really what you want. So maybe your word of the year is creativity. Maybe your word of the year is courage. And that's a really, really big one for lots of you who are starting out businesses and are starting to get the ball rolling on shops and opening your own storefront and even opening from home properly. Maybe courage is your word of the year. And I just want you to think of the word of the year as kind of like the resolution that lasts all year and is a little bit more forgiving than the one all about exercise, whatever, 300 times a year or whatever it is. But it's the way that you guide your life. So to give you an example, in the year that I was building my business, actually in the year that I should say moved my business to a bigger shop front because we moved locations, that December I was in a huge amount of stress. I could feel that the business had outgrown its space, but I was super, super, super nervous about moving to a bigger location because obviously my expenses would go up, my overheads would go up, my life would change significantly going from this tiny little shop to a huge, glass-fronted showroom. So my word for the year for that year was progress. And I kept thinking to myself, progress, progress, progress. And so every time it felt like things weren't moving fast enough or I wasn't getting things done, I'd go, right, Michelle, word of the year is progress. You've just got to make progress. No matter how little that progress is, you've just got to make it happen, okay? So that word of the year really got me through. And then similarly, every time I'd have a little win or a little something that didn't feel like very much, it reminded me to actually celebrate the wins and go, hey, go Mishi, you made progress, that's awesome. So I used the word progress a lot in that year. You might pick a word like focus. If you're somebody who likes a little bit of cake decorating, a little bit of crochet, and a little bit of painting, you can't figure out what it is you want to do, maybe it's about focusing on one thing or on one person or on one concept that you absolutely love. One of the words of the year that I particularly like, because I wish I actually used this one and I don't, but what if your word of the year was just no? And I know that seems really scary that our word of the year we know, and it sounds like it would be negative, but it's actually not negative at all. Because if you're the kind of person that's constantly giving and constantly saying yes and constantly kind of giving to the point of exhaustion, maybe it's time to say no to that many givings, and maybe it's time to say yes to yourself. So maybe your word is no because you're going to start putting limitations on what other people demand of you, or maybe your word is yes because you're going to start allowing yourself to have a little bit more of a life. So tip number one for having an awesome year next year, get yourself a word of the year, print it out, frame it, have it look beautiful, decorate it, whatever, pipe it on a cake if you need to, and just use that as your touchstone, as your guiding light, and you know what, do it to energize yourself, not to set yourself up for failure. So that's my tip number one. I love having a good word of the year. Actually, if you guys want to know what my word of the year is next year, I haven't actually worked it out yet. If you go to Christine's website, she's actually got a planner. It's a free downloadable word of the year worksheet where you can work through a couple of internal questions and come up with your word of the year. I've done it a couple of times, but I generally prefer to I tend to sort of pick a word based on what's happening in my life. I think for next year, I'm probably going to pick effortless, because sometimes I feel like I work really, 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 really hard to make things happen, and sometimes I work a little too hard. And if I just let it go a bit, as I like to say, if you just pretend you're Elsa and let it go, sometimes things happen a bit easier than if you're constantly pushing. So I might pick effortless, but I'll keep you guys posted on that one. So the second thing we're going to do to make our 2015 a little bit more awesome is we are going to take big, fat, accountable action. And I know you guys are all going, whoa, is she for serious right now? And I have a confession to make. I announced the 30 Days of Awesome program before I wrote a single word of the content. Now, I don't need to tell you that writing, it's in fact 32 emails full of content, which are well over a page long. That's a lot. That is a lot. But I had this idea floating in my head for well over a year, and I hadn't done anything with it. And I'm like, right, Michelle, how are you going to stop procrastinating on this one? And what I did is I told people I was going to do it. I put it out there super loud and super proud. And those of you who have been following me for a while would have seen that I mentioned it on the blog itself. I mentioned it in my newsletters. I put it out on Facebook and I was like, hey, the 30 Days of Awesome program is coming. I'm so excited. And I am excited. None of that was a lie, but I hadn't actually produced it. Except saying to you guys, I'm totally going to do that, made me accountable to thousands of people, many of whom I don't even know pay attention to what I say because you're out there in internet land. And taking accountable action is really important for two reasons. One, it changes your mindset, because instead of going, oh, I don't know what I'm going to around to that, oh, whatever, it kind of forces you to be present in the moment and go, oh my God, I've said that out loud. I've given this thing power. I've given it life now, and I can't just ditch these people, or I can't just ditch this idea. I've told people about it, you know? So being accountable is super, 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 super important for yourself. Being accountable also works for other people because, as I often say, clients, family, people in your life, they love to know what to expect. They want to know, right? They want to know what to expect from you. They want to know what to expect from your business, whatever. So if you're out there going, in June 2015, we're going to be offering, I don't know, 10 new flavors or whatever it is. Between now and June 2015, there's going to be at least one person who's like, hey, how about new flavors coming along? Are you managing with that? How's that going? So it not only keeps you personally accountable because in your head you've got that kind of pressure of knowing they're waiting on you, but the other person actually knows what to expect, can look forward to it, can get excited about it, all that kind of stuff. And I found that this totally worked with the 30 Days of Awesome. To be quite honest with you, I was really a bit afraid about putting this thing out there because it's not pure business, and that's what you guys are used to hearing from me for the most part. So I'm like, what if I put this thing out there and they all think I'm just some, I don't know, whack job or something? This isn't good. I can't make that happen. So the way I got around that was telling you guys it was going to happen and then going, right, well, I've got no choice now. I've set my intention. I'm going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. And what I noticed too is that once you set your intention like that, once you publicly declare, I am doing this thing by this date, suddenly things kind of start to line up for you, whether you meant them to or not. So as soon as you say, I'm totally going to open a shop next year, you know, that's when you get the phone call from the friend saying, hey, I saw this shop in the high street and it's for sale. You should check it out. In the case of the 30 Days of Awesome, I was really struggling with the software behind it. And literally like 3 days later, I saw somebody recommend somebody who knows how to use that software. And I went, oh, I should ask her if she can help me with that. And off we went. So often setting your intention loudly and proudly and taking big, fat, and accountable action actually ends up kind of readjusting your world a little bit and making those things happen. And you also become a little bit more aware of the things that can help you because now you've said this is going to happen. So you start looking around unconsciously for the tools that are going to happen. It's a little bit like if you buy a red car, you know, you suddenly notice how many red cars there are on the road. And previously you probably didn't really pay much attention. So it's a bit like that. So set big intention, but be really clear about that intention. So you've got to say, my big accountable action is by X date, I will do X thing. Now that doesn't mean you can't adjust it, but that's the big goal. Admit it out loud to the people who matter, and you will find that you'll be much more inclined to actually get that stuff done. Hey, you guys wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be sitting here unless I'd said, hey, I'm creating this 30 Days of Awesome program. You guys need to come along for the ride, or I'd love it if you came along for the ride. So that's just it. Set the big intention and make it happen. So the third way that we're going to make 2015 a really awesome year is that you're going to, me and you, are going to surround ourselves with the right people. Now, what do I mean by the right people? Obviously, we have family, we have friends, we have cake buddies online that we love. Here's the thing. If you're going to succeed in business and if you're going to be an entrepreneur, I don't care how big or how small that business is, you have got to surround yourself with the kind of people who are going to lift you up and not bring you down. And I say that a lot. It's something I've repeated a lot on the blog too. But here's the thing. I look at a lot of those cake groups and I see people just tearing people to shreds. And I'm like, what the what? Why are they tearing people to shreds? And it makes me feel awful. It makes me feel awful that there are people like that who say those kind of evil things. And it gives off a certain kind of energy, I guess you would say, which just feels so awful and negative. And I don't want to spend my time hanging out with people who are going to tell me it's not possible. I don't want to spend my time hanging out with people who are going to go, clients only care about price. That's all they ever care about. I don't want to hang out with people who tell me you're never going to make money off cake. Well, I definitely don't want to hang out with those people. But do you see what I mean? You've got to spend your time and your energy with the people who are going to lift you up and push you forward. In fact, you really should be spending time with the people who force you to be that little bit better than you already are. I'll give you an example from when I was a chef. So for a long time, I chefed at a very popular restaurant here in Melbourne, and I was a pastry chef. And our shifts used to start at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was always two pastry chefs that would start at 3 a.m. Because when you walk into a cafe at 8 a.m. to eat a croissant, some poor chef has been making that at 3 a.m. So anyway, I noticed that when I worked with one of the, so let me back up a bit. Okay, so every morning we'd have a morning routine, things we had to get done before the proper chefs came in to do their lunch service. So by 7 o'clock in the morning, we had to have, filled 1,000 donuts, packed 1,000 croissants, etc. And we had different quantities each day, but the job was always the same. And I noticed that when I worked with this one girl, we were always running late. Every time. We'd be walking in, we'd be still working while the chefs walked in. And they'd get pretty annoyed with us because we were taking up their space, and we would start to be really stressed, and we'd make mistakes, and we would drop stuff, and it just was, frankly, not fantastic, okay? But I noticed that when I worked with this other girl, we would almost always be early. We'd finish well before the chef showed up so that we could then go and eat a nice warm brioche, which, can I tell you, at 7 a.m., there's nothing nicer than a coffee and a hot brioche. So I very quickly began to dread the days that I was working with the girl that we were always late, and love the days that I was working with the girl that was always early. But it didn't occur to me until very, very long later that what I was doing was relying on those two girls to set the pace of the day. I was letting them take the lead. And so obviously when the one girl was slower, I was just naturally slower. And when the other girl was faster, I was naturally faster because I was working to keep up with her. And I noticed that other people around me, they were setting the pace. Now, I know it's hard to imagine that somebody like me who's loud and out there and whatever would have her pace set by somebody else, but it's so true that the people around you are a reflection of not only who you are, but who you want to be. So, we need to think about the people that are surrounding us. And I'm talking about people who are online. I'm talking about people who are maybe in your very own household. I'm talking about your friends. You need to surround yourself with the people who will lift you up and maybe set that pace for you. The one who's like, yeah, you can totally do this. Oh my God, absolutely you can do this, babe. I mean, this afternoon I was really excited when a couple of people started purchasing the course, and I kept texting my husband, oh, I sold one, oh, I sold two, oh, I sold three, whatever. And he kept texting back with, go, Mish, go, you can totally do this. I'm so excited. We're going to hit 10 by the end of the day or whatever it was. And he was lifting me up. He wasn't just going, oh, yeah, well, that's all. Yeah, good. Do you want a medal for that, babe, or what? There was none of that. He was just so unbelievably, he was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. Many of you know that I'm very, very good friends with Sharon Wee. I absolutely adore her. And one of the reasons I adore her is because she pushes me. She doesn't let me sit around. I'll whine about something, and she'll go, yep, so what are you going to do about that? Yep, so what's happening next? So push yourself forward. And here's a couple of the ways I think you can do that when it comes to surrounding yourself with those people. So one, deliberately seek out mentors. Whether that's me, whether that's somebody else, go looking for mentors, either in your industry or external to your industry, but people who are that little bit further along the path than you are, and cultivate a relationship with them. I'm more than happy if you want to send me an email occasionally, but I usually suggest that a mentor should be someone local. Cultivate a mentor, someone who's going to push you forward and hold your hand that little bit. I want you to hide from your newsfeed the people whose status updates piss you off. You don't need them in your life. They're just annoying. If you've got friends who you still love and adore them, but every time you read their newsfeed, they're like, weather's crap as usual, and of course that would happen to me, or that kind of negative Nelly sort of stuff. You don't have to unfriend them because you still like them, but hide them from your newsfeed. You don't need that negative in your life. You've got to surround yourself with people who lift you up. And the third thing is, if you are a part of a group online, I don't care if that's cake, I don't care if that's crochet, I don't care if that's, women of the South, whatever group you're in, if the people in that group do not make you feel like you can achieve anything and do not truly support you, and instead it's just drama, 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 leave. I promise you that the world will not come crashing down because you're not there anymore. And soaking up that negative awfulness. Surround yourself with people who will lift you up. A couple of people have said to me, Michelle, what do I do if my husband is the one who's dragging me down? You know what? You talk to him about everything other than the business part of it. I know that sounds kind of hard because he's really into it. Or you sit down and you have that time of conversation and you say, babe, every time you tell me you can't do it, that makes me feel like shit. So if you can't actually come on board with this, that's okay, but I'm just not going to talk to you about this stuff anymore. It's just all too hard. So third thing to make our year awesome next year, really, really surround yourself with an inner circle of people who not only love and adore you, but will push you to be that little bit better and will set the pace for you. And that way you always get to enjoy the brioche and the coffee at 7 o'clock in the morning. Can I tell you, sidebar here, I gained an enormous amount of weight that first year that I worked there because I was eating probably a few too many brioche, I think. Anyway. Okay, so let's talk about another one. How are we going to make our 2015 really awesome? One of the things I noticed about a lot of emails I get too is that there's a lot of people who say things to me like, oh my God, Michelle, I'm broke and I'm never going to get anywhere with my business. I have no money. Or they say, I'm really, really terrible about marketing and I just don't want to do it. Or they say, what's another example? Oh, my kids are really little and I want to be home with them and I don't have time to be a mother and to be a business owner and that's just not going to happen for me. I don't know how to make that happen. So I get this. I get this, that life is often, very often, full of dramas, disappointments, roadblocks, if you will, etc. But here's the thing. This year, when you find yourself coming across a roadblock which feels insurmountable, and believe me, they feel insurmountable. To one person, having small children is a massive detriment to their business. To another person, that's a reason to be pushed forward, okay? So I don't care what your problem is, because we all have different problems and they're all important to us in different ways. But I want you to take a small step, I don't care how tiny it is, towards resolving that biggest roadblock. Sit yourself down and say, until now, I haven't achieved what I want to achieve. Why is that? And work out the giant problem, the big hairy ball of yarn all twisted up, which lives in your head and tells you why you can't do things or why you haven't done things. And then what I want you to do is, once you've identified it, and for most people, by the way, it takes about 2 seconds to work out what that thing is. It's almost always money, or nearly kids. Well, the three I hear the most often are money, or children, or fear. So those are the 3 things that most people seem to tell me keep them from achieving the things they want to achieve, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that biggest fear, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pick a little tiny piece off of it. So I'll give you a couple of examples of how we do that. I should say actually that one of my favorite expressions, when I feel overwhelmed by life, which happens kind of often because I run at full speed all the time. In fact, my poor husband, can you imagine? You know how much talking I normally do? Imagine what he must think it's like with me. I think occasionally he hides in the toilet just so that I'm not bugging him. Anyhow, okay, so one of my favorite expressions about feeling overwhelmed about our lives and feeling like there's nothing but roadblocks is a question that one of my very good friends who happens to be a business coach says to me, and the question is this: how do you eat an elephant? Now, when he first asked me that, because I'm a chef, my answer was with like salt and pepper and a bit of balsamic. Is that it? And he was like, no. And my second answer was, I don't know, with a fork. You know, I'm looking for some really complicated answer. And the answer to the question of how do you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So I want you to think about whatever this big, fat, awful problem is that you've got is as the elephant. And I want you to just take one bite. Instead of letting that elephant stomp all over your room and all over your headspace and be the biggest problem, stop it dead in its tracks and just take a little nibble out of it. And then maybe that'll make you strong enough to take the second one. But you've got to take the first bite. You've got to take the small step to resolving the biggest roadblock. So let me give you a couple of examples. Suppose your biggest roadblock is you're terrible at marketing. You're the worst marketer that ever lived. Michelle, I don't like selling my stuff. I can't deal with telling people what my prices are. I'm crap at marketing. Okay, so how are we going to resolve the fact that you're crap at marketing? We are going to do whatever the path of least resistance marketing is out there, which is, as an example, business cards. Let's go and get some business cards printed up, and let's hand out a few. once you've got them, they can't be sitting in your wallet. I mean, they're just money going to waste, right? So maybe we hand out a few business cards. Maybe we pin a few on a few local community notice boards. Maybe we put one up at our kids' school. Just start little. Start with that little thing. Giving someone a business card is a really natural, easy thing to do. Putting them up places where people will notice them, also a really easy thing to do. If any of you downloaded the ebook that I wrote recently, I actually have several suggestions in there which are related to business cards because they're really, really, really useful. People think they're old-fashioned and out of date. They're totally not. They actually have a whole bunch of different uses. So if marketing is your biggest problem, okay, that's all right. Let's just do something little to get through that, okay? So let's say that money is your biggest problem. You're dead broke, can't afford to do my class even though you really want to, can't afford cake toys. You know, I actually recently read a post online where a woman said, I can't afford dummy cakes. And I thought, well, if you're at the stage where you can't afford dummy cakes, then maybe now is not the right time to be in business. Only because you do have to invest something. And if that's not something you can invest in, probably that's telling you that you need to wait a little longer. But anyway, so let's say that you can't afford, I don't know, whatever. You can't afford an oven that you really want. You can't afford an ag bay. You can't afford whatever it is that you can't afford, okay? And you're like, yep, I'm just broke all the time. I want you to actually look at your life and see, how many times did I have a coffee last week? So suppose you go out for a latte 4 days a week. So how we're going to take the baby step is next week, instead of having 4 lattes, we're just going to have 2. But the money we would have spent on the latte is going to go in the jar labeled Cake Business Dream Fund or whatever it is. Just take the tiny baby step to move you that little bit closer to your goal, that little bit, tiny bit closer. Progress is progress. It doesn't matter if you're not growing in leaps and bounds. It doesn't matter if you're opening the giant 10,000 square foot shop. It's totally okay. But if you're not making progress, then that's not okay because you're not moving forward. You're just swimming in your soup of misery and grump, and that's just not fun at all. Well, I personally don't like living in misery and grump. I do have my odd days where I don't make a huge amount of progress, but on most days I try to at least move a little bit forward. Maybe I'll send one email to a company I want to work with. Maybe I'll send, one email to somebody whose work I really admire because I want them to be my mentor. You just need to figure out what the great ball of yarn is in your head or the great elephant in the room and either unravel it or take the bite or whatever cliche works for you, frankly. And just remember that something is always better than nothing. Always. Okay? I mean, it's similar to when I was so I don't know how many of you know this because I don't know how many of you have read the blog comprehensively, but I spoke about the fact that about 5 years ago, I lost a significant amount of weight. So by significant, I mean about 150 pounds. For those of you in Australia, it's about 70 odd kilos. So a huge amount, like a whole other human being was like stuck to me. And that was a really, really hard process. But here's why, 5 years later, I still look the way I do and I still maintained all that weight loss. It's because I just made progress. I didn't attempt to lose it all in 1 week. I didn't attempt to kind of go on some crazy diet and just shed a bajillion pounds all in one go. I kind of went, you know what? This is a marathon, not a sprint. That's where I want to get to. How am I going to get there? I'm just going to eat one diet elephant at a time. I'm just going to conquer one thing. So for me, as an example, I find exercise really boring. I mean, exceedingly boring, and I really hate it. But I knew that was something I had to get through. So for the first 6 or 9 months of that weight loss process, I actually didn't watch what I ate at all. I still ate crap. And I still do, right? I still eat Oreos and stuff. But I went, okay, my goal is just to get to the gym once a week. And once I was getting to the gym kind of significantly, I was like, okay, well, now my goal is to get to the gym twice a week. And I just slowly chipped away until now here it is 5 years later, and I exercise 4 days a week, and it doesn't even bother me. In fact, I love it because I listen to business podcasts, and I actually do some work research while I'm walking around the park with the dog, or while I'm at the gym, or whatever it is I'm doing. And now it's not such a big deal. Do I think exercise is all that exciting and fun now? Frankly, no. It's still kind of boring. I live in the podcast bit of it. But I just chipped away at what I saw as the biggest, most difficult problem. So before I get on to the last thing, which is number 5, the last way we're going to make our life be awesome, I just wanted to say that if any of you had any questions for me, you're welcome to ask them. Those of you watching on Google+, you just tap them into the Q&A box. You click on the Q&A box, which is on the left, but then you tap the questions in on the right. If you don't have any questions, all good. But if you do, feel free. Those of you watching on YouTube, well, you don't get to interact and hang out with me, sadly. Well, you get to hang out with me, you just don't get to interact. So I'll give you a big wave to my YouTube watchers. Okay, so let's talk about the final thing we're going to do to make our year awesome. Now, I'm going to actually go back and repeat these as well. I know that I speak really quickly. I'm trying to get better at that, actually. So sometimes it can seem like, oh my God, she just said so much and I missed it all. But I'll repeat it. Okay, so the last thing I want you to do is act as if you've already achieved whatever your goal is. Or act as if you're already the person that you want to be. And that sounds a bit funny, right? It's kind of another version of fake it till you make it. And here's what I mean by that. If your goal is to be the Ron Ben Israel of Australia and super famous cake maker who's on TV and whatever, I'm pretty sure he doesn't give people quotes via text. I know, I really hope some of you are laughing because I find the quoting via text thing a little ridiculous. Although I've heard that in some Asian countries that's kind of the way things go. But basically, if what you're aiming to be is this super professional, well-known, internationally famous cake maker, then act like one in whatever way you can act like one. This isn't about being full of yourself and having an ego and whatever. It's about behaving in the manner in which somebody who has achieved those goals already acts. If you're somebody who is brave enough to open a shop front, then the decisions you make are based on, what if I already was that person? What if I already felt that way? Okay, so here's the thing. This whole act like as if you are already that thing works across a whole number of things. Just to bring back the weight loss one again, I actually still do this. So one of the things I think people don't realize is when overweight people lose a lot of weight, often in their head they're still a fat chick. And I mean no offense to my compatriots on this, by the way. It's just one of those things. Mentally, you are still that thing. Like a lot of times people, actually, I'll give you a better example. When I go home to Los Angeles to my mom's house, mentally, I turn into a 17-year-old. Like, I get irritated and I have tantrums and I just act ridiculous. It's because in certain situations, it's like our brain hasn't caught up with our body, if that makes sense. So in the case of weight loss, right? If I'm in the supermarket and I want to reach for the Kit Kat or the Snickers bars or whatever, in that moment I think, wait, but if I was already that healthy weight, happy, eating well, wellness, whatever it is person, I actually wouldn't be reaching for that. I'd probably be going to have a handful of grapes or a smoothie or whatever. And because I choose to act as if I was already that person, it actually makes the decision process a lot easier, okay? So suppose what you want to be is really good at networking. Suppose you're not good at networking, okay? If in your head you walk into that networking event thinking, I'm going to act as if I'm already a good networker, the chances are it won't necessarily be easy, but it'll be easier for you to avoid standing in the corner, holding onto the drinks for everybody else while everyone else around you chats. Because in your head, you're going, I'm just going to pretend as if I'm already that person. I do this thing all the time, by the way, and it's not that I'm delusional, because I'm not. It's just kind of a way of tricking your mind into going, oh yeah, well, I'm already there. I don't need to be afraid of this. I'm already there. Or I'm going to act like I am the person who is that. I mean, with this course, I was super nervous about it because, like I said, it wasn't purely business. I didn't do it with anybody else. There is no Sharon standing here. There's nobody else standing here to help me do this. I was all on my own. And it's scary. It's scary to put something out into the world and say, hey, guys, I've put a whole bunch of love and attention and care into this thing. I really want you to do it. And I want you to pay me for it. You know, that's a little bit scary. It's a bit like what you would say with cake. I've put a lot of love and attention into this cake, and now I want you to pay me properly for it. It is scary. I completely understand that feeling. So how did I deal with this? I literally sat myself down a couple of weeks ago and I went, right, Michelle, what do you want to be? You want to be someone who changes people's lives, who not only sells a bunch of these courses because it feeds your kid, but because you know it'll reach out to a whole bunch of people. Well, that person, what would that person do? She would market the course. She would run a webinar. She would send out newsletters. She would do all that kind of stuff. And in my head, I thought, I'm going to treat this activity, launching this course, writing this course, everything to do with it, as though it's a success. As though there is no choice but the world to make it happen for me, kind of thing. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't put in the hard yard. It didn't mean that I wasn't afraid and nervous, as I told you guys. It just meant that in my head I kept going, act as if you are already that person who has already achieved those things. And a little bit in the earlier one where I told you guys taking big accountable action, you know, saying on this date I'm going to do this thing, this kind of fits in really nicely with that. Because if you think about it, if you're saying to your group of fans or your clients or your family or whoever it is, by August next year, I'm going to have a shop. That means a shop front. That means between now and August next year, you've not only got to take action to make that happen, but you've got to make decisions and start acting as if you are that woman who already owns that shop front. That's how it works. And again, it's a way of kind of lining up both your mental and your physical world and saying, I'm totally going to make this happen. That's what's going to happen, okay? In similar, let's say you have an issue with a client, okay? Let's say that you have a client who, I don't know, demands a refund or is evil to you or whatever, because sometimes we do run across people who are, I guess, less than pleasant to us is the nicest way to put that. So how do we deal with that? Well, the person who is afraid and shy and doesn't know what they want to do with themselves and whatever, you know, they're immediately throwing money at people. Oh, actually, I'm just going to interrupt myself to say, I recently saw a cake maker online, and I don't remember who it was, so I wouldn't name and shame anyway, but I can't remember where I saw it. But this person said, this is a cake I recently made for a client, and I really don't like it, so I'm thinking that when she comes to pick it up, I'll just give her a full refund. I find this unbelievably shocking for a couple of reasons. One, she's not even checking with the client to make sure if the client's happy with it. And two, it's not thinking like somebody who's a business owner. It really isn't. It's thinking like somebody who's afraid to put it out there, who's worried about wanting approval. And I understand that feeling. But if that person went, you know what? I'm going to act as if I already own an awesome business, which is doing pretty well. Her first thought would be nothing about, I'm going to hand that person a refund the minute they walk in the door. Her first thought would be, okay, not entirely happy with it, but I'm not going to tell her that, so I'll see how she goes. And if it turns out that she doesn't like it, I've got a plan for how I'm going to respond to that. Because I'm going to act as if I'm already successful and as if my clients already love me. So it changes your whole mindset around the way that you behave to other people and to yourself, okay? So act as if it's already done, and you might find that maybe that gives you that little bit of, I won't say false, but that little bit of confidence, which maybe you don't entirely feel, but when you're acting as if you already fit into a role, the confidence comes along with that. Okay, so those are my 5 tips for how we're going to make 2015 the most awesome year that ever was. I like to think every year gets better after the one that came before it, because every year I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm changing and I'm becoming a different person. And as I'm getting older, I like to believe I'm getting wiser. Probably maturing like a fine cheese, yes, although not smelling. So it's the kind of thing that I think in life we've got to strive to be better every day. And maybe some days we make it and some days we don't. But if we spend our days just floating through our days, well, that's all we're doing is floating through our days. So I'm going to quickly go back and just review the 5 things that I'm going to do or that I currently do in order to make next year awesome. Now, I should also say these are a little bit different to the ones that are in the 30 days awesome, only because those ones are very activity-based. So those ones are very do X to achieve Y. They're very, very activity-based. Today, I want you to do this. And the reason I did that is because, firstly, people often want me to give them a specific instruction. And secondly, do you remember I told you before about how people like to know what to expect? So I find with this kind of thing, I found it easier to say, here's an activity you can do. Now, you might read some of those emails and go, I don't know, Michelle, not my thing, man. I can't do that. Like, it's just not my thing, babe. And that's okay. But I want you to look at it and go, well, if this isn't my thing, how would I do this? How would I make this happen? Or if this doesn't apply to my business, how could I make it apply to my business? Or if this doesn't apply to my life, how could I make it apply to my life? So I wanted it to be very action-based. 1, because I think people like being given a set of rules to follow. And 2, because it makes you feel empowered. I did this. I can tick this off the list. Woo! Etc. So if you do actually sign up for the course, and I'll put the link up in a second, if you do sign up for the course, just remember it's there that you do the activities, that you actually get stuff done, and that you show up in your life. Showing up is so important. You show up not only for yourself, you show up for your clients and your family, your kids if you've got them, etc. So let's go back to the beginning. Step number one to having an awesome year next year, we're going to pick a word of the year. Like I said, you can go to Christine's website and download her little tutorial for it. It's free. Or you can just think on it a bit. You don't have to actually do anything kind of formal about it. But make sure that you're putting that word of the year in lots of places where you can see it and it reminds you. And I'm telling you, it works really well. Actually, one of the tips about that is during the year that my words was progress, I actually wrote it out on a piece of paper and I put it in my wallet, both in the coin section, and I had another one in the bill section. Because how many times a day do you open your wallet? About too many. Too many for me, probably. But you open it pretty often. And every time I was opening it, often to pay a bill for work or whatever, I'd see the word progress there. And it actually made a massive difference to how I thought about things. It really did. So the first thing is pick your word of the year and stick to it. None of this, I'm going to lose 1 million kilos, none of this, whatever. I'm just going to live a happier life this year. I'm going to live a healthier life this year. I'm going to live a creative life this year. I'm going to live an abundant life this year. Whatever it is you want to live, make that be your touchstone for the year. The second thing I suggested that you do is take big accountable action. Announce stuff out loud. Say it out loud. Get it out of your head and into the real world and make it actually happen. Give it a deadline. Tell people who matter. Tell people who are going to keep you accountable. Tell the people who are going to say, hey, Michelle, you said that website was launching. It's like 6 months later and nothing hasn't happened. What's going on there? So take big accountable action by saying it loud and saying it proud. Sing it from the rooftops. I can imagine that some of you are hearing that going, but what if I fail? What if I don't make it? What if I told these people that I was going to do it and then I didn't do it? Well, you know what? What's that telling you? That probably you haven't actually figured out what your roadblock is and you haven't actually taken action to try and bring that roadblock down into little steps. So, big accountable action. By the way, if your only accountability is that you send me an email saying, hey, Michelle, by this date I'm doing this, I'll probably say, that's lovely. Now go find 10 people who are actually going to keep you on track with that one. I might do it too. I might keep you on track. In fact, the people who go to our tour, I keep them on track quite a lot. I'm like, hey, how you going? It's not unusual at all for them to get an email from me out of the blue that says, I haven't seen you say anything lately. What's going on with that business of yours? So, be accountable, take big, scary, accountable action, and tell people what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Third thing, surround yourself with the right people. I want those people to push you forward. I don't want those people to drag you down in whatever way you need to do it. Hide them from your newsfeed. Go and find people who are in a group that you love or appreciate or who you think are great. Join a mastermind. Join a women's business coalition of some kind. Surround yourself with people who are going to push you forward. Find mentors. Delete people who are not your people. I mean, if you're brave enough to unfriend them, yeah, you, but if not, hide them from your social media. Just stop giving energy to the people who don't give energy to you, and in fact, our complete energy sucks. You don't want them in your life. The fourth thing is to take a small step of resolution towards whatever your big roadblock is. Sometimes it can be a little hard to work out what our roadblock is, but as I said, for most people, it tends to be money or family or fear. For you, it might be something entirely different. Maybe you don't feel that your skills are up to scratch. Maybe whatever it is. Work out what the big roadblock to you moving forward is, to you making progress is, and just take a tiny bite out of that progress. However tiny that progress is, you've got to be out there and you've got to be making it, okay? And the fourth thing is that I want you to act as if you are already that person. You're already that awesome person, right? You are already there. You're already achieving all those things. You are already making that stuff happen because you're already like that person, exactly like the whole fake it till you make it sort of thing, you know, exactly the whole thing where you are the person who doesn't reach for the Mars bars, or you're the person who doesn't answer people's inquiries by text, or whatever it is that makes you act like that person you want to be, like that business owner you want to be, like that mother you want to be, like that sister you want to be. Act as if you are already that person, and you will find that things start to happen. And here's what's really amazing about almost all of those 5 things I've told you. Almost all of them interact. How do they interact? Once you take big accountable action, you actually, whether you know it or not, start taking small steps to get over your roadblocks. You do, because now you have to reach the goal, right? So you start picking apart the hardest thing first, whether you know it or not. Okay? If you are hanging out with people who drag you down and just frankly irritate you and upset you and whatever it is they're doing, that's what they're doing, which is not great. But you know what? How can you act as if you're someone with successful friends if the people you're surrounding yourself with are neither successful nor positive forces in your life? So all these things kind of actually fit together and attach really, really, really well. And you know what? The person who creates the word of the year is the person who acts as if they want to succeed. And maybe it goes the other way too. Perhaps your word of the year for 2015 is success or abundance or, financial security or whatever your word or phrase is for the year. And that word or phrase of the year actually forces you to start acting as if you've already achieved those things. So all of these things sort of act as a bit of a push and a pull in your life, and that each one kind of gently nudges the other one forward or makes it move forward or makes it actually start to happen. So let's go back to the 30 Days of Awesome. I'll just explain quickly what it is. Essentially, you sign up, costs you $1 a day. Most people who can afford a computer and to watch a webinar can afford $1 a day. You're probably paying more than that in web download fees or whatever it is. And it's actually 32 emails, which are designed to do exactly that. Push you forward, make your year a little bit better, make your year that little bit more awesome. And we're going to do it by taking action, by taking a whole lot of little steps that actually make things just that little bit better, okay? The first 10 days are all things to do with your business life. So there might be actions around marketing. It might be something like, go and hand out 100 business cards or whatever. That's not one of them, but I'm just giving you an example. So the first 10 days, very, very, very business focused. All about getting your business ready and moving and all happening and taking actual, real, legit action into 2015. The second 10 days are all about your private life. And you know what? I actually want you to have a life, which is quite amazing to think that you can have a life and a small business. You can. Sometimes you need to make a little bit of adjustments, both right and left in either of those, but it is actually possible to have a life and a business. I don't know if any of you were here very early in the call, but there's a little bit of background noise. And the background noise is that because this evening I have 14 people over for a dinner party at my house. And what happened with that is wonderfully embarrassing. But my niece graduated high school this year, and she asked me if I would, kind of related to that, she asked me if, and there's a certain food that I cook she really likes at this time of year, and she asked me if I would make it. And I said to her, yeah, come over on Monday night, I'll make it for you, no problem. And I told her that on Friday. I didn't really think very hard about that, because if I had, I would have remembered that I'd booked this webinar. And then over the weekend, I went, oh my God, I have the webinar on Monday. How am I going to make my niece her dinner and attend a webinar? How am I going to make all that happen, right? In the interim, my in-laws called me on Sunday night and said, hey, we know that you're having this big dinner for your niece or our granddaughter. Do you mind if we come to? There's 5 of us. And I went, sure, I can totally make that happen. And so in the end, how I got around that is everybody was coming. I called them and said, guys, I know we normally have dinner at 7. Do you mind if we have dinner at 6? I got up a little bit earlier this morning to do a little bit of prep before I had to start my working day, and I had some plans this afternoon. And I said to everyone, I really, really love you, but when it's dessert time at about 10 to 8, I've got to run, I've got to do my webinar, and then I'll come back. And so that's exactly what happened. I don't know if you guys can hear the voices in the background, but I have 13 people out there and me enjoying dessert without me, which is totally fine because they completely support me and love me and they understood. So I have a life. I enjoyed a beautiful dinner with my family that I cooked, and I'll go back to them once this webinar is over. But in the interim, I still managed to have a business as much as that's reasonably possible to do so. So you can have a life and you can have a business. So the last bit is exactly that. It's about how do you bring those two worlds together. The fact is that our lives bleed into each other all the time. Our work life and our work life and our home life bleed into each other whether we want them to or not. I often joke that they melt into each other a little bit like ganache left in the hot sun. The edges bleed together whether we want them to or not. We kind of can't help it, and especially when we run a business from home, which many of us do, the business phone is ringing or your mobile phone is ringing and it's the same phone, you're answering it one minute with, hi, sweetheart, and the next minute with, Jenny's Cakes, how can I help you, or whatever it is. Our lives bleed together, and you cannot separate the person from the business owner entirely. You really can't. But there are ways that you can make those two things work better together. And that's what the last 10 days of the 30 Days of Awesome is about. Little ways that you can blend those two things together in ways that are really not taking away from either of those lives of yours, but just adding in or doing them in a more fun or more interesting kind of way, and away you go. So that's what the 30 Days of Awesome is all about. Look, the last bit also involves a little bit of gratitude and a little bit of spirituality stuff, something I don't talk about often on the blog, only because most people aren't there for that, but it's something that I really believe in, which is being grateful every day, looking after yourself, remembering that you are a person outside of your business and that you deserve to have a life too, even if it's only sometimes. You definitely deserve to have a life, and that's super, super important to me, okay? And I'm going to leave you guys with my favorite quote, and it's my favorite for a couple of reasons. One, because I wrote it, which of course makes it awesome, right? But two is because it completely sums up how I feel about the blog, how I feel about everything. And the thing is this: don't let your life be the reason that you don't have a business, but don't let your business be the reason why you don't have a life. So I'm just going to repeat that so you can all scribble it down, which is, don't let your life be the reason you don't have a business, but don't let your business be the reason you don't have a life. You can have both. It's not about perfect balance. It's not about getting it right all the time. Sometimes it's just about the little things you do, about having the word of the year that influences you, about hanging out with people who make you feel really good about your business dreams. Sometimes it's about taking action daily. And one of the things about the 30 Days of Awesome, why I did it by email, is so that I don't expect you to actually do one item a day. If you do, awesome. I will be so impressed. Some of those are a little bit demanding though, so I don't know that you can achieve it. But maybe what you do is you save all those emails in a folder, and maybe the folder is called Awesome. Maybe the folder's called Yay Me. I don't care what the folder's called, but something to lift you up. And maybe the next time you're having a bit of a crappy day and you're feeling like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere and nothing's getting done and I just feel like this business is not going to get off the ground, maybe you pick one at random. Pick one of those emails at random, open it up, and take action that day, either in your life or in your work or in the edges where those things bleed together. I really wanted it to be the kind of thing that inspires you and motivates you and actually gets you moving. And I don't care how slow you're moving. I don't care if you're a turtle wandering through a sea of peanut butter. I just want you to actually get moving. And that's why I created that course, so that it forced you into action, fun action, action that actually sees results. I really wanted that to happen for you guys. And I have to say, writing the course did that for me. It forced me into action on many, many, many levels. So I've shown you guys all the link. Hopefully you should be able to see it on the screen there. I've shown you guys all the link for the course. If not, you can just find it on the blog itself, which is thebizofbaking.com. I've had a lovely time chatting to you all. According to this thing, you can all hear me, which is good, but nobody had any hugely, massively wonderful questions, which is okay. If you did have some and I missed it because the technology didn't work or whatever, please feel free to send me an email and ask it, and I'll either answer you personally, which is what I generally do, or I can always answer it via a confused and cake-one question. The last thing I wanted to say before I say goodnight to you all and go back to dessert is I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much, not only for listening to what I say in these webinars, but reading that blog every week. I especially appreciate those of you who take time out of your incredibly busy lives to comment on a post that you've seen there, or to send me an email and say, hey, Michelle, just wanted to say I really appreciate what you said. Or even the ones who say, hey, Michelle, I disagree with you entirely. I actually really like that. I like having people who interact with me. I love knowing that I'm a part of your lives. I love knowing that you invite me into your homes in whatever way you do, whether that's via email or webinar or whatever it is you do. I'd love for you to come along for the 30 Days of Awesome ride. You will notice if you do the course that every day I've got a hashtag and an activity so that you can let me know what you're doing. And that's because I want to come too. It's going to be awesome and I want to be a part of that. You can start it at any time. One thing I had a couple people ask me about is when you've signed and paid up, just so you know, 3 emails will arrive immediately. One of those is a receipt from PayPal. One of those is a receipt from me. And the third, which seems to be getting stuck in a few spam folders, is a email from a company called Aweber. They're the back end of this this program, and you need to actually open that email and take action, because that authenticates your email, which then starts all the 30 days rolling into your inbox, okay? I really hope you guys come along for that ride. If not, the blog is always there. It's always free. I'll always post on a Tuesday. even when it's nearly my birthday, which it is next week. Thank you so much for being a part of my life and making every one of my days actually just that little bit more awesome. I hope you guys have a great week. And if you need me, you know where to find me. It's just thebizofbaking.com. Lots of love from Melbourne and hope to speak with you soon. If not, I'll see you on the 30 Days of Awesome.